regardless of what position they're in, they've all been all smiles.
Yeah. I mean, they're sitting here playing Hearthstone for scholarship money. What more could you ask for? They're getting to get their matches streamed.
You could ask for a 2-0 lead.
Yeah, you could. But aside from that, this is a pretty cool thing to have this type of event go on for Collegiate Hearthstone.
So Duke is going to go with Druid in not their opening hand. Not a bad one. Those 2 Savage Words kind of mucking up the works. And Austin, meanwhile, this is a Demon Handlock build. There's Jiraxis. There's Mal'Ganis. And the rest of the hand, Ancient Watchers, Mountain Giants.
Yeah.
All they're missing is ways to taunt them up in a Void Color.
Yep. And Austin does have, or is that? Okay, Austin is the handlock. So they're just sort of flipped here. You have to sort of look across. Duke is the Druid here, and Austin is the Warlock because that is the only deck they still need to find a win with. And Duke does have a decent hand without having Wild Growth. They can innervate out Ancient of War next turn and start getting at least catching up to the card advantage that handlocks always have.
Yeah, this is the problem that Duke did not want to see. They had Keeper of the Grove for Twilight Drake. You don't have a big game hunter for this Mountain Giant though, so they're gonna have to actually fight through this 8/8 first. And this is really the kinds of situations I feel like where Druid finds themselves in dangerous points, where they don't have a ton of counterplay to what's going on. Ancient of War does offer a pretty sizable threat to that Mountain Giant, but there's so many ways to counteract that. You're looking at Dark Bomb, Ironbeak Owl, you know, just ways to taunt up and maybe just sit still for a few turns. There's a lot of ways that handlock has countermeasures to a 5/10 taunt. And so while the 5/10 taunt can't be a problem, you're just hoping your opponent doesn't have the right range of hands. And so because of that, I wouldn't be terribly surprised if they chose to draw cards in a situation like this. But when you're desperate, you know, sometimes you play a little bit more defensively.
Yeah, maybe you can pick up a Wrath to throw into that Mountain Giant next turn to try and take it down. If you're the Druid in this situation, you just hope that they don't have another big threat after the Mountain Giant to throw down, because, yeah, you can sometimes deal with one big card. Sometimes, if you get really good draws early on, you can deal with the 2 big threats and then start mustering up a big board. But a lot of the times, once you get to that first one, you're just running out of stuff.
Yeah, and this is where Austin is really going to be clued in on what's happening here. With Ancient of Lore being played and no real measure of defense, I think that the gates are wide open right now. I can totally see crashing in. I mean, sure, you have a very valuable trade into this 5/5 right now, but as far as you can tell, your opponent's going to have to be doing the trading as it is.
Yeah.
I think this is a great spot to really try to extend this advantage. And so with the life tap, now the life tap makes things a little bit interesting, though. You know, they chose not to play any amount of threats here, not try to get Ancient of Wars on the board, maybe set up for bigger taunts later on. This tells me now that they want to trade and actually just try to fight a card advantage battle. So very, very interesting kinds of opinions are taken here. They still may even decide to take an aggressive route as we get the perspectives fixed up here. But you know, I don't really feel like any of their plays are losing plays at this point. I feel like they're all very good for very different reasons.
Yeah. The thing is, they also have to find something to play because they do have 10 cards. And it looks like they're going to go with the Ironbeak Owl on the Ancient Watcher to start getting some more pressure in. Throwing on the Owl, it does sort of just get eaten up by Swipe. But at this point, having that 4/5 on the board that can actually attack is really big for pressure. They realize, like you said, no Wild Growth, innovated out an Ancient Allure. They could probably tell that there wasn't much in the ways of a good hand to try and build up a board and fight from the guys over at Duke.
Yeah, so they are going to go Swipe on the Mountain Giant. Want to play a little bit more defensively, but again, Austin is just getting more and more information as this game pans out. When they see the Swipe here, now the Mountain Giant went basically completely uncontested, and they've had to invest their entire turn in taking care of this. This means that Dr. Boom is wide open at the moment.
Oh, yeah.
Like, barring a second Swipe, there may not even be a way for Duke to get back into this game.
Yeah, while Emperor Thorsan's drawn, though,
wow.
and that comes out immediately.
It's hard not to play Emperor Thorsan with this kind of hand.
Boom.
You know, lots of heavy mana costs in their hand right now. Emperor Thorsan is a big enough threat. I mean, does Duke feel comfortable leaving this around? Well, I can promise you the answer is 0. If you leave Emperor Thorsan around, that
against handlock, 9 cards?
Against basically anything. I mean, in addition to it being a 5/5, it also is making everything in your hand cheaper every single turn. So the thing that this card provides is not only the threat in itself, but also the idea that 2 threats a turn could start coming out afterwards.
Yeah.
And that's And Druid does not fight well in that situation. You know, they want to fight a one-for-one battle and have stuff like Ancient Allure be able to keep up pace and then have Force Nature and Savage Roars end it afterwards. They're fighting from behind, and they've been doing so at every single step of the way.
Yeah. Duke's thinking, that's a 5/5 that drew you 4 innervates and a coin. Where can I get me one of those?
You can get it from Black Rock Mountain.
Yes, you can.
The first wing of Black Rock Mountain.
Nice. Yeah, and Austin can also feel pretty good that, hey, both innervates are out of the way. So they can start counting sort of the maximum damage that can be done without Emperor Thorsan. No innervates, no innervate shenanigans.
Well, now something interesting has happened. They just got Whirling Zap-O-Matic out of this piloted Shredder. Now you're looking at
10 damage with Savage Roar.
Yeah, these are like actually pretty sizable amounts of damage that can be happening here. So Austin, they have ways to build back to this board, but Duke has done a pretty good job protecting their life total. You're going to see a couple 7 drops back behind this, and if that Whirling Zap-O-Matic gets protected, that's double attacks that are coming in. Savage Roar is scary in combination with that card.
Yeah, it really is.
It's scary in combination with any minions.
Yeah, you usually think about it in Shaman with like Rock Biter or double Rock Biter. We've seen a couple times where in competitive play, Whirling Zap-O-Matic has ended games against handlock players on turn 2, or sorry, turn 3 or 4.
It was DreamHack.
Stan Sifka.
Yeah, he lost a Fire Vat on turn 3.
He wasn't even mad.
He went life to, how could you be?
Yeah, turn 4, the turn that I'm going to play my big threat, boom.
If I got killed by something that adorable, I wouldn't be mad either.
Yeah. Yeah, well, we have different definitions of adorable. Sir Admirable. Yeah, and Austin doesn't have spot removal here, so they're just going to have to plop down this Dr. Boom, hope it's a big enough threat to maybe draw some attention. And
hey, so we got a game here. And I think at this point, like you've seen Iron Beak Owl from your opponent, they just went Dr. Boom, didn't Hellfire this board, didn't Dark Bomb or anything. I think you feel good trying to protect this Whirling Zap-O-Matic with the Ancient of War and hoping that you can finish the game next turn with Swipe and Savage.
Yeah. That's 20 damage this turn. With Savage Roar Swipe, that's 20 damage. If they're 2 damage off lethal, if they tap that turn, they'd be dead.
If they had any pushback behind this, I think they would go for the Savage Roar Swipe this turn.
Yeah. Even double Savage Roar would have ended the game there.
Yeah, but they had to use that Savage Roar defensively. There was no question about it. But
Yeah.
now, once again, the Ancient of War, I mean, there's a chance the Ancient of War sticks around. You know, if these boombots go awry, you know, say they just both go upstairs.
You're duds to the dome.
That's a 5-1 that's still sitting there. And I think they have gotten the signal that Austin doesn't have a way to taunt up. They don't have spot removal. They just have a bunch of big minions in their hand. And part of that came from what the Emperor Thorsan being played so quickly. They're going to take a more defensive stance here, though, and I definitely can't blame them for this.
Yikes!
You know, they're still reloading with 2 Darnassus Aspirants. The Ancient Watcher. I mean, this is an unsilenced one right now, and they have 2 great 7 drops in their hand. So this game kind of went from back and forth, like aggressive stances players could take. They could be very defensive instead. It seems to be that every single time we get a spot like this, players are favoring to take defensive stances, which put them in positions to fight attrition wars. That seems to be the common ground of all these teams so far.
Yeah. And now Austin's starting to have to build this wall up. They're thinking, well, we play the anti-heal bot, we go up to 22. Force of Nature Savage Roar the next turn would do exactly 22.
Yeah. I mean,
so they got to play the Sun Fury.
That's always something that's on your mind. I don't know. I don't think you have to.
Well, you don't have to. If you want to play around combo and it's full extent, then you play the Sun Fury.
It's a difficult decision to make, honestly, because you know one way uses the mana more efficiently, the other way doesn't. And this play doesn't play around combo either, unless they're going to coin out this Sun Fury Protector, which I'm guessing they're going to if this is the play.
Yeah.
And
seems like it.
It's a good taunt. Only the Molten Giant, perhaps? They want full defense on this. They say if you want to trade your Aspirant for this 4-2 taunt, you go right ahead. Wow, TJ. That was so close to being an absolute disaster for Austin.
Yeah, if Duke wasn't keeping track of the coin, they're thinking, he just played the owl. We draw Force of Nature, we win. Then they see the coin. Then they see the Sun Fury Protect, then they're like, ah. Then they see the Force of Nature draw, and they're like, oh.
This is a great illustration of the tiny little things in this game that make a world of difference. Anti-Healbot would have put them at 22. They would be like, you know what? Duke's already used a Savage Roar. They're going to have Force Nature Savage Roar in 4 cards to beat us. I think that we can get a little bit more.
Or if they just didn't do the math and like,
here.
22 seems like enough.
Yeah, I mean, you got to be taking all this stuff into consideration. But Duke's still not out of it yet. I mean, the Force Nature Savage Roar, they can basically clear the board here and then be left once again with 2 7 drops. Now, the problem with this is they're giving initiative over to Austin. And when Handlock starts rolling into the 8, 9 mana turns, they also get very dangerous. And this is a much different position. They want to make a big swing. They're looking for Big Game Hunter.
If they trade into this Ancient Watcher and have nothing else to play, that's game. Because there's 12 damage on board, plus a Doom Guard in hand. That's... Oh, no, not quite.
Yeah, it's 1 damage off.
Because they were able to have enough mana to armor up.
Yep. 1 damage off of lethal.
1 damage off.
I mean, just if you really think about it, all the little tiny things in this game, every single one has made a difference.
They pick up a Dark Bomb? We haven't seen a Dark Bomb yet.
I think they're going to life tap, honestly. Because not only that, but there's just plenty of great draws left in the deck. Like another way to taunt, they can still heal up here. I imagine with the way they've played, they're still going to continue to play defensively. I can see them running over this Ancient of War.
Yeah, it's still a little bit dangerous. 12 is a pretty low health total. And they can't play multiple things here. You play the Mountain Giant, and that's it. Or you play the anti-Keelbot, and that's it. There's nothing that you can do in combination with something else. You could, well, yeah. No, you can't even play the BGH because then it kills off your own Mountain Giant, or Molten Giant.
I think they're going to conclude that this has got to be anti-Keelbot.
Yeah.
And once again, playing a little bit defensively here. If they push that 8 damage to face, there is a risk of Big Game Hunter. There's a risk of Force Nature Savage Roar, again, just being able to get so much value because of that 7 power minion back behind it.
Yep.
A lot of little things can make the difference here. And so the defensive play, once again, is what players are going for. But now Duke, they're in the same situation they were last turn. But I feel like this turn, they're going to have to conclude Force Nature Savage Roar. I mean, this is just, they're killing 4 minions and taking 2 damage for 2 cards. You're just not getting a better deal than that from Druid.
Yeah. At some point, though, you also have to think, in a long game, without Force Nature Savage Roar, Druid has a lot of trouble closing out against Warlock.
It's just got to kill all their threats at this point. Honestly,
which is a tough task.
It's very tough, especially when Jiraxxus is one of them. But I don't see another option here. I mean, they're facing down lethal damage. They have to move now. They just the Ancient of War. So many things are going to go disastrously for you play the Ancient of War, because you'll likely just find yourself in the exact same position. Your opponent will kill your Ancient of War, they'll play a big threat, and then you're staring down the same board where you're going to have to Force Nature Savage Roar. Yeah, I like using it now more than later because your opponent, in this situation at least, has to have a big threat right away, or you take initiative.
Yeah. And so now if you're Austin, you're thinking, well, that's both Savage Roars, that's 1 Force of Nature, that's both Innervates. They're sitting pretty right now. They're like, we're just going to keep tapping.
Yeah, they feel very safe with this.
Plop down some
at the reload. They go, hey, you know what? Yeah, we got lethal again, by the way. You need to take care of this one as well.
Yeah, and I just don't know how long a Druids can do this. This was, in the past, this was considered such a weak matchup. Back when double combo wasn't as popular, and Emperor Thorsan wasn't in the game, so combos earlier weren't popular. Druids were considered the class that just couldn't deal with threat after threat after threat after threat. And to an extent, it's still just the same. You plop down these big guys, especially in a grindy matchup where Druid has to use combo to clear. It's just really hard for them to come out on top.
Yeah, and so there is a chance for lethal here. Dark Bomb, I don't think that provides it straight away, but if this Doom Guard fades, discarding that
I believe it is
Shadow Flame.
You could attack in to the Ancient of War, Shadow Flame your Twilight Drake, Dark Bomb the Ancient of War, and then Doom Guard face.
That also is a way to do it foolproof. They do have lethal here 100% of the time. You're absolutely right, TJ. But you know what? They got to spot that.
They have to spot that. That's not the easiest of lethals. It's not completely obvious.
I mean, because here's the thing. They likely were calculating how to win this game without drawing the Dark Bomb. So now they draw the Dark Bomb, they have to go through all the motions again. But again, I think a great opportunity to find it.
Whoa.
Wow, they miss it. And so
that's rough.
It's still pretty tough for them to actually fall out of this game, though. I mean, they're still sitting comfortably at 16. They still have threat initiative on board. They're taking care of the 5/10 that's there. Just where's the win condition from Duke coming from? Now, granted, they have another turn now.
Yeah.
They're not dead.
But they're pretty much dead.
Yeah, and so that's really, what ends up happening with this handlock deck. Sometimes with handlock, you miss that opportunity, and it just doesn't come back to bite you that often because at this point, I mean,
You're
look
still
at the board
plopping down.
position. Yeah.
Oh, well, I missed it, but I threw down, you know, a fresh Molten Giant. I don't know if they're going to be able to do this. There's nothing that they can do. They can try and, I don't know, cycle, but then they won't even have enough mana to play like a BGH. I guess if you cycle, no, you still can't. Because if you cycle, you're still leaving the Molten Giant, or sorry, the Mountain Giant at 2 health. Even if you draw into Big Game Hunter and you kill off the Molten Giant, you're still leaving all that power on the board. You don't have enough mana for Force of Nature. There's no Innervates left in the deck.
Yeah, second chain Extramus is not going to offer any help whatsoever. In Austin, you can see their faces that, you know, they know, I feel like they know they got the game locked up, but that, look at that relief on their face. 2-0 now for Austin, and they 3-0.